What's going on, everybody? Welcome to PFF's live college football preview show here in the beautiful Western and Southern Studios. See what I did there? Got to highlight the nameplate. We are so glad that you guys are here to watch this show with us as we preview Week 11 in college football. We're going to give you everything. The best bets. We're going to give you all the best breakdowns. We're going to talk about the latest college football playoff rankings. There's going to be a lot of words about that. On the desk with me here, I have Mike Renner, Anthony Treash, Eric Eager. Fellas, how are we feeling on this beautiful Friday afternoon? Actually, morning. Still morning.
Forgot to mention the TED Talk I'm going to do about butter, the history of butter.
It's true, yeah. The people have been clamoring it for. I mean, you threw that on us at the very end of the show. Like, we were seconds away for
we were taking knees.
Show.
The game was over.
We were. If you guys missed the show last week, after this is over, you got to go watch. Tresh just lays the butter is fake take on us for absolutely no reason. Completely.
I don't even know what that means.
Can we do
it's clearly real. Like, we've all seen it before.
Physically, it's tangibly real.
As soon as I brought that up, Eric gave me a death stare, like he was about to hit me. But we need to do like a Stephen A's list, like top five reasons why butter is completely the most unnecessary thing on this planet. I will do it. But my TED Talk did get cut from the show.
You guys are. Do you have it? Do you have the top five?
I can come up with them pretty quickly.
Okay, all right. We're gonna go to Kendall. We're gonna get Kendall into the show. Kendall Valenzuela. She's over on the bar set. She is looking at all the YouTube comments. Actually, that's where the butter talk originated.
That is where the butter talk came from, because we were talking about cinnamon at first. Cinnamon as an elite spice, and then butter came in. Absolutely. And then I think you guys are just an interesting group. Like Renner, talking about Renner being on The Bachelorette before this is like, people forget that, and then Tresh doesn't like butter, so here we are. It's going to be a great show.
Mike, I thought you did great on The Bachelorette.
Oh, thank you.
We're going to be talking about all kinds of stuff on the show. Obviously, you guys have free reign to talk about whatever you want in the YouTube chat. Kendall's going to be looking at all that stuff, and as we go through our college football playoff rankings, as we go through a lot of these game breakdowns, feel free to get in the chat, get in on the show. That's the easiest way to do it. I want to start things off here talking about the latest college football playoff rankings.
Do we have to?
We do. This is where I feel like the most words are going to be said.
I know.
Top two, Georgia and Alabama. That's the same, but with Michigan State's loss, we then have Oregon at number 3. We then have Ohio State sneak. They've earned it. They played really well as of late. You got Cincinnati just barely on the outside looking in at number 5. Michigan State. I know we're going to have quite the discussion about Michigan being ranked 6 and Michigan State at 7. Oklahoma still at number 8. Notre Dame 9. Oklahoma State at number 10. What do we think about this one? Ohio State now in that playoff picture. Cincinnati left just out. Oklahoma still at number 8. We're going to talk about where the committee got it right and where they got it wrong. Tresh, I want to start with you. So when it comes to a right and a wrong, what do you want to highlight most about this week's college football playoff rankings?
Yeah, I mean, I was ready to rip this entire thing to shreds when I saw the 7 blank teams. I was like, oh, they're of course going to have Michigan State ahead of Michigan. I was in the camp that I think Michigan's a better team. And they did exactly what I would have done. I think Michigan should be deservingly ahead of Michigan State, even though Michigan State did win head-to-head.
Deservingly?
Yes.
It's a strong word.
If they play on a neutral field, Michigan is winning more than 50% of the time. Come to find out, too, Harbaugh got some word from the Big Ten. The refs really muffed this thing up. They missed a lot of calls there that would have changed the complete outcome of the game. We're also talking about a 1 in 10,000 play that really kind of shifted the game in Michigan State's direction there with that fumbled exchange between J.J. McCarthy and Blake Corum, because Blake Corum thought he was going to pull the ball, but that's neither here nor there. At the end of the day, they're the better team. I think that's the way they kind of went there. Now, the problem I have, it's very hypocritical because they're going to have Oregon ahead of Ohio State because Oregon beat Ohio State head-to-head. I mean, at this point, then the whole thing's kind of lost. And that's a common theme throughout the whole thing, right? You look at the Big Ten down at the bottom. You have Wisconsin ahead of Purdue, Purdue ahead of Iowa. Why? Because Wisconsin beat Purdue, Purdue beat Iowa, and so on. And that's what they all do. They value the head-to-head, but except for Michigan State. That's where I think they kind of that's where I have a lot of problems with
Well, it's dangerous, right? I mean, all we want from the committee, it seems, is consistency, because I think the biggest conversations that we have every week are, we go, okay, well, look at the logic to what they did with this team. We have to apply it to this team. And what we got this week, at least I feel, is the most dangerous and reckless top 25 the college football playoff has put out in a long time, maybe ever, because of what you said. My biggest wrong is that they have Oregon ranked ahead of Ohio State. Now, if you're going to put Michigan ahead of Michigan State because of all these other reasons that go against head-to-head, you can't tell me that Oregon's going to beat Ohio State at this point in the season. No way. So where's the logic there?
Well, the logic is that the committee really wants and probably believes that Utah's going to beat Oregon in a couple weeks, right? Because to me, the last few years, you have no Pac-12 teams making the college football playoff, right? And so you understandably have Pac-12 folks who are like, we're not getting enough love. So they put them, there and said, look, if you win out, you're in the college football playoff, knowing full well that this team doesn't really have the goods to win out. In fact, they'll probably be underdogs against Utah in a couple weeks. They'll probably, I don't know what they'll be in the Pac-12 title game, but they'll probably lose that game too, and so they'll be out of here. Last week's games don't actually change where Oregon and Ohio State sort of stack in my mind. Oregon had kind of a meh win against Washington, and Ohio State grinded one out against Nebraska, so they couldn't have moved them after this week. It's just the other stuff seemed to make more sense. And they have this albatross that they have to wait a couple weeks before Oregon loses to rectify.
If Washington would have had a competent offense, they win that game. They couldn't. That's why their offensive coordinator got fired.
That's what we said last week, though, right? I mean, that was
a big concern. I mean, Oregon could not do anything from a passing perspective. And Washington shut them down. Just Washington couldn't take advantage with their offense.
Trevor, I think your problem is you're expecting consistency from the committee when that has never been the case, and that's the reason why we debate these every single week. And I'm just like, do we have to actually debate it? Because they are going to change their mind next week, and they're not going to tell us why they changed their mind next week. Is the problem with these rankings? And so I'm not going to debate 6 versus 7. Where I'm going to debate is what's going to matter at the end of the day, and that's 1 through 4. And the fact that Cincinnati is still on the outside, an undefeated Cincinnati team that has beaten a top 10 Notre Dame team in these rankings, is left on the outside of this top 4 when they haven't lost a game, when Oregon has lost a game to Stanford, when Ohio State has lost a game to the only team that they've played in these top 25 in these rankings. That, to me, is absurd at this point. Ohio State, obviously, if they run the table with their schedule, sure, move them ahead of Cincinnati. If Oregon runs the table with their schedule, sure, put them ahead of Cincinnati. But right now, if you look at the schedules that they've both played and how they've sort of gone through them and completed it, Cincinnati deserves to be there. And from a talent perspective, they deserve to be there.
Here's a question, Mike, though. You think, okay, if Oklahoma wins out and Cincinnati wins out, and let's say Oregon and Ohio State don't, let's assume that, or let's say Ohio State does, that 4th spot, does it go to Oklahoma, given both Cincinnati, I know they beat Notre Dame, but for the most part, Cincinnati's schedule has been a cakewalk this year. Same thing with Oklahoma. If they both win out, Oklahoma's got a much harder schedule the last 4 here. Which one do you put in? Because to me, that's the tricky one. That's why having Oklahoma at 8 is so dangerous in the sense that if they win out and go through the Big 12 undefeated, there's a lot of sort of explaining they have to do to say, oh, they went from 8 to 4, given that I don't think Cincinnati's going to lose the rest of the year.
Well, I think if that's the case, you give it to Oklahoma. Oklahoma will have played a more difficult schedule at that point. And so then you can give it to them. But right now, as it stands, Oklahoma and Cincinnati, I would have rather played Oklahoma's schedule at this point. They really haven't played anyone worth a damn that would scare me.
Right.
So they have 3 plus 4 plus the Big 12 title to prove themselves.
We talk a lot about Oklahoma potentially being undefeated winning that Big 12 title, but do we think, and I'm sort of getting to this point where I think that even if Oklahoma loses one game and still wins the Big 12 title, they might put them in over Cincinnati. Because look at the rest of Cincinnati's schedule. It's nothing, right? They've got SMU on the schedule. They'll probably have Houston. So, okay, if they run that table, they've got the win over Notre Dame, which feels like a top 10 win. But let's say Oklahoma loses to Oklahoma State when they play in the regular season, right? That's a top 10 team loss. That means they would have beat Baylor this week. And let's say they play Oklahoma State again for the title a week later. They beat Oklahoma State then for the title. I think that might be enough to put them over Cincinnati, given the logic that we've seen.
This city would burn to the ground.
I don't know what the case is for Cincinnati to get in at this point. It's kind of what I'm saying, given what we've seen.
But I think them being at 8 is a clear signal. Look, Oklahoma, if you want to make the college football playoff, you better win out. To me, that's what it says, because if you look at their schedule, it's like a 1-score win against Nebraska. It's a grinded out, you're behind by multiple scores against Kansas for part of that game type of, they're looking at that, and they're not that impressive. I mean, even the Texas game, they were down by 21 and had to come back and win that game, and Texas isn't particularly good. So I think that they're, to me, having them at 8 is basically saying, look, you have to run the table, and you probably need help.
What's the spread if Oklahoma plays Oregon or Michigan State? Or Oklahoma?
Neutral field? I'd have to look at the numbers, but I would assume it's probably 6.5.
Oklahoma, yeah. And that goes back to the thing that I think they got wrong the most. Why is Oregon and Michigan State ahead of Oklahoma? And I'm going to make your day, Mike, and Notre Dame. Notre Dame's a better team than Oregon and Michigan State. They are. I mean, flat out. Who'd they lose to? Cincinnati. That's the top 5 team in college football. You look at what Notre Dame's done since their bye week. Tommy Rees, I've been very critical of him, but he's been great. I mean, he's kind of simplified the offense for Jack Cohn, understanding okay, Jack Cohn's not very good. He's an accurate underneath passer. Let's play to that strength. And let's also take some stress off the offensive line. More play action, more RPOs, more screens. You're not seeing a lot of those true pass sets there. They're seeing a less rate of pressure, and Jack Cohn can get the ball out efficiently and accurately. They've been a pretty good team. And I think Oregon and Michigan State, they're just so fraudulent there. And even with Oklahoma, those close calls, Notre Dame losing to Cincinnati, they're more deserving to be.
I firmly believe, as somebody who has not liked Oregon all year and who, they're 14th now in our power rankings, et cetera, I think Utah is going to beat the brakes off of them, and I don't think it's actually going to be close. Like, you have Tavion Thomas, you have the new quarterback that they have in place of Charlie Brewer. You just look, and I know Stanford was without some key players on Friday night, but Oregon losing to them in overtime, and then Utah basically 10-run ruling them on Friday night. To me,
quarterback Tanner McKee was not there, which is a big player to me.
Quarterback is.
We talked about Tanner McKee being very good, though.
Tanner McKee's PFF grade is 68, maybe 69.
Well, I would get what you're saying, but Utah has been decreased in the minds of many because they have 2 Mountain West losses early in the year.
Right.
Two teams that were actually fairly good. BYU and San Diego State are actually pretty damn good teams. Yeah. And then they had a loss to Oregon State, I believe. But for the most part, they've been fine. And even if they, I think at home against this Oregon team that can't move the football, I think Utah beats them pretty easily.
And also, too, those losses came in a situation, the quarterback situation wasn't so stable. Cam Rising, new starting quarterback for him, he's been lights out over the last few weeks. He's really taken that next step forward, and I think that...
And their defense is super physical. I think that that's the thing the committee hopes happens, which is that Utah just kicks the shit out of Oregon.
I feel like there's a lot of things that the committee is really hoping happens so that they don't have to make these decisions, and that's just kind of everywhere. That's what we think, obviously, here on this table, but let us know what you think. Get it in the comments and the Twitter replies. Kendall's looking at all of them, so tell us where you think the committee got it right, where they got it wrong. We'll read some of them a little bit later in the show. You mentioned Oregon being a little bit lower, 14th compared to 3 when it comes to the college football playoff versus Pro Football Focus. I want to take a look at that top 10 versus top 10 right now because we see things pretty similarly at the top. Georgia and Alabama, that's both the same, but we're a lot higher on Oklahoma. We've got Oklahoma at number 4. Cincinnati, we've got at that 5 spot. That's very similar, but Texas A&M sneaking in there for us. Pittsburgh, big overtime win this week. Oklahoma State, and then Clemson still at 10. We've got no Michigan, no Michigan State, nothing like that. And so that's where we really differ, it seems, from the college football playoff. Eric, what do you think about that?
I'd rather stick my head in a vat of asphalt than watch Clemson play Michigan.
A vat of butter, hot butter.
But I do think Clemson would be favored in that game, right? I think the interesting thing about having Clemson 10 is
you think Clemson would be favored?
Yes. I think the hard part about having Clemson there is they do just have better players than Michigan and Michigan State. They've been terrible this year, but that's what those are, that's trying to produce a betting model where it's hey, if you give me a pick 'em between these two teams, which team would you take? And even though Michigan and Michigan State have played better, they played Big Ten football, and Clemson's just a far better football team.
Anthony's been giving you a look that's just...
I'll give you Michigan State, but no, Michigan's favored against Clemson on neutral field. They have to be.
Nothing says they have to be. I don't think. I agree that, and priors matter. That's the whole deal with So when you come in and we talk about Texas A&M, right, last week against Auburn, everybody's like, oh, we're going to take Auburn. It's no, Texas A&M started the year higher. They've had some bumps along the road, but when you look at recruiting rankings, we look at the thing that seeds these models, that matters even into week 10, even into week 11. So again, I know Clemson's played like crap all year, but the stuff that what they're built out of is better than what Michigan's built out of.
I don't think the case for Clemson being favored over Michigan is that they have better players. I think, the thing with Michigan over the last few years is that they were so predictable defensively. Everybody knew what they were going to do defensively, and they took advantage of it. It's not that they didn't have good players. They just had a horrible scheme, and I think they've really fixed that. Now that we're seeing these very good, talented players start to shine. Daxton Hill, Aiden Hutchinson. This is a very good defense, and also, too, a breakout player, David Ajabo, finally getting some snaps for him.
Right.
Learning how to play the game of football. He just picked up the sport about 4 or 5 years ago. And so that's why I think Michigan I think they would beat the brakes off Clemson. Now Michigan State
beat the brakes. You guys are overusing this phrase.
Yes, they would. But Michigan
Both
State,
of you.
Michigan State,
It's
I don't
too
know.
much.
I'll give you that. I think Clemson would probably beat Michigan State.
Mike,
Michigan
you need to fit a beats the brakes off of this team into the show to bring it to hit for the cycle here.
I would
just
just
at some point over the next 30, 40 minutes, you have to fit that in.
There's a lot of conversation around teams that aren't going to make the college football playoff right now. I am focused on those top 4 and the fact that Cincinnati is getting boned right now.
We have them at 5 in our
saying.
rankings.
So yeah.
Like
That's we do see eye to eye there. Well, I mean, when you look at how this whole season has set up, it feels like there's a lot of, yes, there have been like some big games, but a lot of the big games come from this point on. There are a lot of teams that are up here in this ranking when you look at strength of schedules that have very difficult strength of schedules moving forward. Oklahoma's one of them. They've got one of the toughest strength of schedules moving forward, and as we said, they will quote-unquote figure it out. We will see how good Oklahoma is. Michigan, third toughest. Michigan State, 10th. Ohio State, 14th. Those teams all play each other, so they kind of beat themselves up there. Oklahoma State obviously has Oklahoma potentially twice. Then
Georgia's
you get into,
got a little cakewalk all the way to
I mean, Georgia's definitely got the cakewalk here. They played Florida. Florida's not nearly what we
Tennessee
thought.
fans are very optimistic.
Oh,
The diehards are.
no, we're getting into that game preview, and we can crush that. But there's no doubt the number 1 and the number 2 teams in the country. We look at them, and as Mike said, it's kind of like we're not really arguing those top 2 teams. They played a lot of their tougher competition to this point, and they've succeeded through that. So that's why they've got easier schedules moving forward.
I think these remaining strength schedules, though, highlight why I said there's pointless to debate these rankings right now, because you have Ohio State playing Michigan State, Michigan. Yeah. You have Oklahoma playing the 3 best teams that they'll face in the Big 12 all year, and then you have the Big 12 and the Big 10 championships, to where you run the table. I don't care who you are of these top teams we talked about in the Big 10 or Oklahoma, you're making the playoff, because that is where, like, that is how difficult, that is all the big games they have left. The committee is going to reward you and how you are trending going into the postseason. You drop one of these games, that's it, you're out. So I think debating this right now is meaningless, because, like I said, the committee is going to change their mind drastically over these last 3 weeks.
If Oregon wins out and Oklahoma wins out, Oregon's currently sitting at number 3. Mm-hmm. They're going to have a Pac-12 title if they win out. Oklahoma obviously plays a more difficult schedule, but they're sitting at number 8. Who do you think gets in if Oregon and Oklahoma?
I would give it to Oklahoma. You would be hard-pressed to not. I mean, they didn't lose to Stanford. I don't care if you beat Ohio State.
Very key.
Exactly.
It's very key. Anytime you lose to Stanford. Tanner McKee. Wow, that was
well done.
That was beautiful. All right, what about this?
Classic.
What if we set up the college football playoff differently? What if we were not boxed in by this 4-team playoff system? Because we talk about that all the time. Do we want it to expand? Do we think there's too many teams in? We've looked at some semifinal games over the last couple of years, and even for saying that we want to get these 4 teams in, we want to have that emphasis, some of these semifinal games have stunk over the last 4 and 5 years. So what's your perfect playoff this year? There is a lot of parity in this current ranking. There's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of teams that you can make a case for, even maybe outside of the top 10. So my question to you guys is, fill your perfect playoff. If it's 4 teams, let me know who you think the 4 teams are. If you think it should be 6, 8, 16, 2, whatever it is. Anthony, I'm going to start with you. You tell me, what is your perfect college football playoff this year?
Give me 12 teams. That's what I want to see.
12?
Yes, I want 12 teams in there.
Eric took off the glasses.
Yeah.
He took off the glasses.
This is going to be the best thing for the sport, man.
Anytime he does this is the moment.
I need a drink.
Right now. You think Mike's kidding or what? You don't know what's going on there. Top 4 teams, they get a bye. Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, Oklahoma.
Okay.
And then we'll have a bunch of matchups there. Cincinnati, number 5.
The
number
top
12,
2 teams have
Mississippi.
already gotten a bye for the last 5 years.
All right. This is a long-term plan.
You gotta let them talk.
Okay,
You gotta let them talk.
All right, let's get into this now. 12-team playoff. This is going to be the best thing for the sport. If a recruit really wants to play, and win a national title, right now they have a few schools to choose from. So that's what I would have right there, the 12-team playoff. Those are a lot of intriguing matchups there. Cincinnati versus MSU, Michigan versus Wake Forest, Notre Dame versus Ole Miss, Texas A&M versus Oregon, and with those first 4 teams getting a bye. I think this year, we all know who's going to come out on top. It's going to be Georgia, and I don't think anybody's going to tell us otherwise. But I think in future years, this is going to be the best thing for the sport. This is going to make the parity a more common theme, because this is the most equal
None of those games are good.
Listen, this is more of a long-term thing.
Oh, they're good,
I think this is the year with
in their own way.
With the NIL this year, And also, if we expand the playoff to 12 teams, you're going to have recruits more willing to go to other schools, right? Because right now, first things on their mind, where am I going to get drafted? Where am I going to win a national title? All that fun stuff. With a 12-team playoff in the NIL, you're going to see more recruits willing to go to other schools, right? You don't have to go to, Georgia, Alabama. It used to be Clemson. I don't know about that right now, or Ohio State. I think the only 4 coaches in college football would say, I just want 4 teams. It's going to be Kirby Smart. It's going to be Nick Saban. It's going to be Ryan Day, Dabo Swinney. Why? Because they already have that shoe in there, right? They know if they do their job, they're going to make the 14 playoff. They don't have to go through all this other BS. And they know that it's going to take those recruits away. I think with this system, it's going to make the sport more fun. I mean, name another fun sport that has a short playoff with 4 teams. Silence. It's crickets, people. Why? Because there isn't one. What does the NFL do?
We just spent 15 minutes talking about all the permutations between, frankly, like 3 or 4 really good teams and a bunch of kind of okay teams.
I know,
about
but
who's going to make the college.
I'm talking long term.
But that's it's still like adding more to that is just me. Like, who wants to watch Texas A&M versus Oregon?
I mean, I do.
Texas A&M and Oregon fans.
You're 3v1 here.
I kind of like Michigan, Wake Forest.
This year's a good matchup,
They're
but this
fun.
is a
The
longer
matchups
term
seem
idea.
fun.
Michigan State, U Cincinnati.
But
is
there a difference? Do we just reserve these games for bowl games? Do they need to be counting as championship games? Is kind of what this conversation comes down to.
The other question is also, like, Anthony makes a good point about recruiting and like all this stuff. But we're in November, and all of these teams still have a chance at the college football playoff. Like, that's still something that a recruiter can go to and say, look, we're University of Cincinnati. We were in the college football playoff race for a number of weeks. Like, there's no difference between, hey, we actually made it in. Asterisk, there's 12 teams that made it in.
But what if they run the table and they don't get in?
They're still in it,
then what do you say?
They're not winning the college football playoff. They're not. And so, like, what difference does it make at this point?
Mike, here's the problem with 12. 3 weeks from now, Ohio State's going to the Big House. If neither of those teams loses the next 2 weeks, the winner can go to the college football playoff. The loser is not. If you had 12 teams, it wouldn't matter.
Yeah,
that game would not matter. The game, whoever wins that game or whoever loses that game is still going to the college football playoff if you have 12 teams. So the ultimate playoff is the regular season, which makes college football so special, why every single game matters. And if you didn't make it, if you made it to where it's 12 teams, Alabama could sleepwalk to 2 losses every year and still make the college football playoff. So it would not matter the regular season whatsoever for a lot of teams. The teams that you're lamenting against, the Clemsons of the world, they would always make it because everyone would have that high prior on them. This year, Clemson's not going to make it. Oklahoma might not make it this year. That's just how it is with the tight
Alabama didn't
playoff.
make it in 2019.
And if Alabama loses to Georgia, they might not make it this year. So
that game would
keeps
still
it
matter.
tight.
That game would still matter because the winner gets a bye. That's everything. Hang on. I get what you're saying. You're like, oh, we were in the college football playoff for so many weeks. You know what Wake Forest's goal this year was? To get to 10 wins and win an ACC title. They're not even thinking about college football playoff. Why? Because they know there's not a snowball's chance in hell they're going to make it. With this, it gives them that opportunity.
Not if they blow a big-ass lead in North Carolina.
But then everyone knows once they make it, there's not a snowball's chance in hell that they win it, is the other thing there. So, like, why are you getting teams in there that have no chance of winning it? So that's why I think 4 is the right number. If you're going to do anything, I would go to 5 and make it a 14 playoff, and the number 1 seed gets the bye all the way to the finals. Because you have to reward being the best team from the regular season and have a full playoff going to that final game to where you're not hurting Georgia. You're not making Georgia play extra games this year to prove that they're the best team when they proved it for 13 games prior to that.
That's the whole thing. And this is why, like, when we compare it to anything else, we compare it to the NFL playoffs, we compare it to the NCAA basketball tournament, et cetera. Like, the issue has to be, you have to balance you have to make it almost 100% chance the best team is in it. So you need enough teams where the best team is in it, right? That's why, like, and I put up 4, but I actually think 2 wouldn't be so bad because I think in the current college football landscape, it's actually pretty easy to pick who the best team is. Yeah. You also need it big enough. You also need it big enough so that the best team's in there, but you need it small enough so the best team wins them a decent amount of the time. And that's what you don't get in the NCAA basketball tournament when you have 68 teams or whatever it is.
Sure.
The best team doesn't win it all the time. And again, you want to reward the team that's the best throughout the duration of the season. So 4 to me is a decent number. 2 to me, I think, is a better alternative than something like 8 or 6.
So you think the NFL, you should just put the top NFC team and top AFC team, and that's the Super Bowl?
Well, I mean, they both. Well, so because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were the first team since 2012 to make the Super Bowl without a first-round bye. this past year. And now the NFL has basically done what you said, which is to make just one bye each conference. So like there is a huge reward for being the best team during the regular season.
So why do we play the wild card?
I mean, money. But like,
what's 12 teams do?
You can't compare the NFL to college football because the NFL, the Detroit Lions are not that much worse talent-wise than the Tampa Bay Bucks are. They're within like 5%. They are.
Yeah. The parity in NFL.
The parity in NFL.
It is.
The difference between Cincinnati and Alabama is immense.
I'm not arguing
any difference between any two NFL teams.
This plan, I think, would get the parity more equal to the NFL. That's what I'm trying to say. And I don't want to hear like, we want to make sure the best team wins it every. What happened in 2007? The Patriots went undefeated. They lost in the Super Bowl to a wild card team. I mean, that's not going to happen. Not every year you can guarantee it. At that point, there's no playoffs. Give it to the top regular season
I don't
finisher.
think there's going to be arguments on both sides of this, right? Yeah. You want the better team to win. You want other teams to have a chance to win. You're going to be able to point out examples in other sports where Cinderella happened. And you are going to stand firm in saying that we don't necessarily want the potential of that happening to ruin it on more even years. I'm super intrigued by the 5-team playoff.
I'm not going to lie, I kind of like that. I like that.
But the only
Anthony would make the second tournament 12 teams.
The only thing that is really holding me back from that are the years where it's really easy to say that this year, right? Because you go, give Georgia the bye. Like, don't make Georgia play this. But if there's
Clemson, Alabama, and 18 was like that.
Right, like who do you give the bye to? And that bye is a massive bye. You were bye weeking twice. I don't think I just made bye week a verb. Bye weeking. I don't think that's
It's very similar to a team playing a bowl game, though. Like you get that extended time off, like you would in a bowl game.
Right.
So college football teams are not used to that.
Yeah, but then Georgia would not play a football game
for like 6
weeks. For 6 weeks, which I actually think then gets kind of dangerous, right? You don't play a football game for a month and a half, and then you got to show up for the national championship. That's too much rest to me. So I think there's obviously a ton of factors that are
just
involved.
Make it 12 teams and give 4 teams.
Okay, all right, hold. I would go with 4 teams this year. I think 4 teams is the right number for this year. But all I'm saying is that whoever comes out on top of the tournament, they've got to play Purdue on a neutral field the week after to validate.
I think we got to.
That's all I want.
We have to make this interesting. And what if you made the number of teams dynamic year to year? You basically say, look, this year
you want to give the committee
you have
more
power. If you had some sort of like numerical ranking to where
you can say, look, Michigan State, you're the 5th best team this year, but we're only going to pick 4 this year.
When did they establish the threshold?
I think at the very end.
The first ranking or the last ranking?
The last ranking.
Oh my!
If you put a computer in there, you're going to get all the football guys.
That would be the most watched football program that doesn't have to do with the game.
Is it 6? Is it 8? Is it 4? Is it 2?
Okay, we're getting too carried away. Kendall, what's the chat saying? What does the chat think about the college football playoff?
Yeah, so first of all, they love all your ideas. You guys are giving them all sorts of ideas in here too. So we're having a great time in the chats. Make sure to leave your questions, any comments, so we can try and get these guys to answer as many as we can. But one question that came up though is why is PFF so low on Oregon when everyone else isn't?
What is the Oregon? I mean, I would say watch the games, but I mean, what beyond that doesn't give us a lot of faith.
So in the preseason, what we do is we group by conference and we give each individual conference basically a level. So the SEC is the best conference. The Big Ten, the ACC, the Pac-12, and the Big 12 get different levels. And then based upon things like what your recruiting ranking is, whether your quarterbacks or coach is returning, we regress you a little bit to that number. So if you're in a bad conference or a traditionally bad conference like the Pac-12, you're going to be regressed further. If you're in a conference like the Big Ten, where a lot of teams are pretty good, you're going to be regressed upward. And if you're a good SEC team, you're going to have a high rating just from the beginning. And so Oregon just started out a lot lower. And then, as you said, Trevor, just watch the games. Like, they're not that good. Like, they're barely winning against teams that aren't very good. They had the big Ohio State win, and that increased their rating a lot. But that game was also kind of noisy. And so it's a combination of a lot of things. But the biggest one is when you play in the Pac-12, you're just not going to have a high rating at the beginning of the year. You're going to have to overcome that.
Yeah. I've been sweating out more games than Eric sweats in the midsummer day. I mean, it's just been constant in the Pac-12.
No, you got the jab in there. That's good.
He did.
I didn't. That was totally out of left field. That was good.
I mean, they have been. I mean, they're barely getting by UCLA.
Yeah, and it gets hot in Cincinnati.
It does.
So
Sure.
Eric does.
It's the worst part about Cincinnati.
He do be sweating though.
The humidity is horrible.
All right, so last week Last week we focused in on quarterbacks when we were talking about the NFL draft because there was a big matchup between Matt Corral and Malik Willis that we wanted to highlight. Wanted to take a little bit of a step back because everybody always wants to ask this time of the year who the biggest risers are, right? We took a look at the early season rankings, the early mock drafts, but now who's been coming up the most? Mike, who has been rising up the draft boards the most this college football season?
Happens every single year. Guys come out of seemingly nowhere to get first-round grades because that final year of college is so important. No real Joe Burrow this year, but there are some guys who came out of late-round grades or basically hadn't played prior to this season to now first-round grades and possible first-rounders come next April on the PFF draft board here. So we're going to kick it off at the quarterback position. And like I said, not quite Joe Burrow, but Kenny Pickett. If you watched him last night, the guy is electric. Has not had a bad game yet on his schedule performance-wise. Goes from a 67.0 grade last year, and that was his third season as a starter, to a 93.1 this season. Has been the highest graded passer in college football. He is, like I said, a massive riser, possible first quarterback off the board come next April. The next guy on this list, running back position, a guy we're going to talk about a little bit later here when it comes to the Heisman, Kenneth Walker, highest graded running back in college football, transferred from Wake Forest last year. Didn't get utilized much in that Wake Forest offense, which I don't know what the hell they were doing there, because this guy has been a nightmare for opposing defenses. The reason why they only have one loss this season. Highest graded runner, 77 broken tackles, 1,328 yards. All those numbers lead running backs in college football. Next up on this list, it's wide receiver Jamison Williams of Alabama. Another transfer. Goes from Ohio State to Alabama to play, which is a rarely seen thing, but that's how little Ohio State is. And this guy has been a monster. 868 yards this year, 7 touchdowns. He only had 266 yards in his career prior to this, because like I said, couldn't see the field for Ohio State. Been Alabama's top option, and with his speed, probably going to run the 4.3s. He could be the first wide receiver off the board next April. Next up on this list, we're going to go to the offensive line, where not a Power 5 guy. Central Michigan, Bernard Raymond, a former foreign exchange student in Michigan, coming from Austria, I believe, in high school, gets an offer at Central Michigan to play tight end. 2 years of tight end there. Switches to offensive tackle last year. 75.1 grade in his first year at left tackle. Now a 92.4 grade this season for him. He has been a monster. If you watched him play on Wednesday night, he was dominant in that game. Bernard Raymond, the athleticism, the upward trajectory, he could be playing his way into a first-round grade. And then one more riser, last one on this list, on the defensive side of the ball, David Ojabo. Treash touched on him earlier. This guy has come out of nowhere. 29 snaps he played last season. Started off the season really slow, but since Week 4 this year, only Aiden Hutchinson, his teammate, has had a higher grade among edge defenders, 21 pressures over his past 4 games. He has an athletic, long edge and has just been, like I said, dominating the past handful of weeks. And it's one of those things where you don't need to see a big sample size to know when a freak athlete is dominating on a football field that might translate to the NFL level. So there you have it, fellas, the top 5 risers on the PFF draft board so far this season.
What do you guys think about Kenny Pickett? Kenny Pickett obviously played last night, so we got to see him go up against Sam Howell. I mean, he's, like Mike said, the highest graded quarterback that we've got so far this season. It was kind of a come out of nowhere year, but yeah, I know that you guys are big on the NFL too, so when you watch Kenny Pickett against Pittsburgh, what do you think about this?
I think the only thing I know about Kenny Pickett is, like, God must really like him, because last night they were losing that game. He throws a touchdown in overtime, and the rain comes coming down like cats and dogs for North Carolina in overtime, and they end up winning that game. So his Heisman hopes remain. He was great the first half, kind of slowed it down. I think he's been really impressive, though, from just like a play-for-play sort of, throwing the football.
I think he's the most impressive player that I've seen this year outside of Caleb Williams. Now, from an NFL draft perspective, where I get concerned is he holds onto the ball for a very, very long time, and he has ample clean pockets there with that Pitt offensive line. I mean, on average last night, it was just 3.4 seconds average time to throw. I mean, you're talking a full second that you're going to have to get the ball out quicker in the NFL level, almost a full second. For the season, 3.2 seconds. For a guy that's not very athletic, gifted athletically, that's a little bit of a concern projecting to the next level. So that's where my concerns lie. But from a college production standpoint, he's been magnificent.
Before we get into our game previews, got to remind everybody that Western and Southern is teaming up with PFF's very own Chris Collinsworth to get you ahead on the scoreboard for both your fantasy and financial situations. You want to hear more about Chris's old playing days or some behind-the-scenes stuff with Al on Sunday night, or maybe just the need to know when it comes to your financial future. Now you can ask about both, and when you do, you're going to have entries for a catered party for the big game in February. You can submit all of your questions at westernsouthern.com/askchris. That's westernsouthern.com/askchris. Those questions will be answered on the Chris Collinsworth podcast as well as Western and Southern's Instagram. Remember, with Western and Southern, you can be rest assured on game day. Want to start in the SEC for our game previews this week. I know Eric's got a little bit of bragging to do as we talk about Texas A&M from the previous week, something that he called there. So Texas A&M up against Ole Miss this week. It's at Ole Miss, but A&M favored by 2.5. What do you guys think about this? Tresh, I'm going to start with you. What do you think about this SEC matchup? It feels like we've got a lot of back and forth going on in the SEC beyond just Georgia and Alabama so far this year.
I'm not touching the spread. I love the total, though. I love under 55.5. Why? Texas A&M offense, it's still pretty bad, right? They're one of the bottom 5 least efficient teams in SEC play right now. And you look at Ole Miss, too. I mean, they're depleted offensively. Injuries have really dragged them down. Wide receiver, I mean, heck, last week one of their top receivers was a quarterback a couple of years ago, John Rice Plumlee, who's a fantastic athlete, but that just goes to show how down bad they are right now. So I'm not too confident in that team kind of being their, the standard Lane Kiffin, potent, explosive offense, especially against a good Texas A&M defense. And that Texas A&M offense, like I said, it's just not good. The only times that they've really gone over this type of point total in a single game this year for A&M has been against Bama, and as we know, that came against fluky plays. And then against South Carolina. And South Carolina, they're not very good. So I like the under 55.5 here.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm agreeing with Tresh here right out the gate, but I'm going to like the under 2 as well in this
game. By the
game.
way, it's 56.5, so
56.5.
You get an extra point here.
You get another point. It's going the wrong way that we like because the matchup that I like for Texas A&M is in this game is their defensive line going up against Ole Miss's offensive line, and they just have guys at every single position that can get after the quarterback. And I think that's a big thing. If you're going to shut down Ole Miss, you've got to pressure Matt Corral. They have DeMarvin Leal, Michael Clemens, two elite athletes at their respective positions, and 2 possible high draft prospects for Texas A&M's defense. And then they have it at every single level to where, like you said, Matt Corral is not working with a ton of offensive talent around him that's going to rise above and beyond and score points on the Texas A&M defense to cover that number.
And Antonio Johnson, the slot corner for Texas A&M, one of the biggest, most underrated breakout players I've seen this year. I mean, that's where they go. They go to the slot, and if they don't have their guy Ontario Drummond out there, and they're probably not, I mean, it's going to be a struggle for them.
Yeah, Ole Miss doesn't have a lot of the ideal weapons that they thought that they were going to have going into this season. And on the flip side, you guys are talking about the over/under. If I was taking a team, I'd be taking Texas A&M to cover that 2.5. And the reason why is because I feel like their bread and butter, what they want to do, that ground and pound, it's been really great over the last couple of weeks. If you just add 2 extra rushing yards to Devin Akane's total last week, it would be 3 straight weeks in which Akane and Isaiah Spiller have both gone over 100 yards rushing. So Texas A&M, they've got an incredible 1-2 punch right now. Since week 7, they are the #1 rush grade team in the SEC. This is what they want to do. And you've talked a lot, I know, Tresh, about Zach Calzada and how we don't really trust him entirely. The Alabama game was awesome, but we don't have a lot of faith there. Now they can lean on that run game. And so I'd be taking Texas A&M. If I was going to take one of these teams, I'd be taking Texas A&M to cover that 2.5 spread.
Yeah, I mean, now that it's at 56.5, I think you do have to be price sensitive, right? 56 is a number, it's divisible by 7, right? It's a key number in totals, so that's why I wrote my notes. The market numbers are good here. I think 56.5 you could probably go either way. If it's 55.5, I would go over, just because when you look at Ole Miss, I still don't think they're a great defense. Like, they allowed Liberty to move the football on them. They got lucky with some interceptions at the end to cover that number, 9.5 last week, which I think all of us had against the spread against Liberty last week. Whereas, Texas A&M has 2 really good running backs. Akane is the second most valuable running back in college football right now. And in college football, that can be enough to score enough points. And 50, whatever the number is, mid-50s is a low total for an SEC game. And so, to me, I can't go under here, but I probably would lay off 56.
For the last 4 weeks, I mean, it's been under city for Ole Miss because they've been hurt at wide receiver.
I think the sportsbooks really want you to look at those. Like they want you to go through and be like, oh, it's going to continue to go that way.
Tresh going to smack you one of these days, man. You're right in the danger zone with that.
How many points did they score last week against Liberty? 27?
Yeah.
Liberty's not a good defense.
27 times 2 is 54. That gets you pretty close.
Okay, do you think Liberty and Texas A&M's defense are equal?
I don't think that's true, but I do think the pace of game is I do think the pace of games could be better, considering Liberty is more of like a quarterback running the ball type of thing.
Well, A&M they like to ground and pound.
They have a quarterback that beat Alabama this year.
I'm just letting y'all go. All right, next game we got to talk about is Oklahoma and Baylor. We mentioned this earlier in the show. This is where it gets real for Oklahoma. This is where things really start to happen for them because it's on the road. It's at Baylor. Baylor, not a great loss to TCU last week. Okay, that's not great, but this is a ranked team. This is still a team that's ranked in the college football playoff. It's Baylor, and then, like we mentioned, Oklahoma State's later in the year for Oklahoma, and then potentially Oklahoma State again for the Big 12 title. So this is huge. Tresh, what do you think about this? I know you've been really big on Oklahoma's offense, specifically Caleb Williams, so far this year.
Yeah, I like Oklahoma getting 5.5 here. Let me just read off some data points here for you. Oklahoma, since Caleb Williams took over against Texas, number 1 in EPA per play, number 1 in yards per play in all of college football. Caleb Williams, 94.8 PFF grade this season. The next highest by a true freshman we've ever seen was Trevor Lawrence, 90.7. We all said that was one of the best seasons we've ever seen in college football. This guy is doing it even above that. This is some of the best football we've ever seen at the quarterback position. In the entire PFF college era, going back 8 years now, that first half against Kansas, that was disgusting. It was horrible football. He did kind of have that big mistake there that I've been concerned about, kind of like an issue with Spencer Rattler, taking the risk downfield instead of the easy option underneath, but at the end of the day, what he can do on the ground kind of makes up for that. And overall, as a passer this year, you look at his completion percentage over expectation, right? How much are you kind of exceeding expectations there? Caleb Williams leads that metric by a couple of percentage points. That's on par with kind of like Joe Burrow levels, that he holds the record from a few years ago. And then Spencer Rattler there, number 2, Stetson Bennett at 3, and Sam Hartman at number 4. I just think Oklahoma, they're just far more talented than Baylor is. Baylor, I still think that they're very well coached here, and I still like the over because I do think that they're going to be able to take advantage of that Oklahoma defense. Jeff Grimes, the offensive coordinator, was, of course, the mastermind of the BYU offense under Zach Wilson that kind of led to him being number 2 overall last year, along with the, of course, raw talent he has. So I like Oklahoma, minus 5.5, and the over 62.5.
Here's the thing about Caleb Williams, though. He is still a true freshman, and he has not faced a defense like Baylor's on the road the way he is going to this weekend. Is the biggest thing. It's like, yeah, you can grade really well when there's not a ton of pressure on you and when the defenses you're facing are tissue paper. Now, this is going to be a real test for him on the road. I obviously think he will probably rise to the occasion, but there is a strong chance that things can go south because, like I said, not a lot of 18, 19-year-olds come into college football ready to show up every single week. And so I think that's the biggest thing for me. Baylor has some real deal dudes on that defense. Jalen Petrie, their slot cornerback, leads all cornerbacks in pressures with 17, leads all cornerbacks in defensive stops with 33. That guy can be a monster in terms of adding on the running game and the RPO stuff that a lot of college offenses like to do. So I think that, to me, they'll be able to hang with Oklahoma in this game.
Yeah, hat tip to one of our interns, Taze Chefs, for that CPOE number. One of the things, though, you'll notice about that was both of the top 2 quarterbacks are Oklahoma players, right? And CPOE, the second part is expected, right? And expected means, is Lincoln Riley dialing up passes that have a high chance of being completed? Because sometimes you have a high CPOE because you're throwing bad balls and your accuracy is bailing you out. Against a better defense, right, like Baylor, will he be able to do that is a good question. That's why in this game, the number's 63 now. I like under, again, 63, another number divisible by 7. You get sort of a key number there. I like under there because I think Baylor against an Oklahoma team that allowed Kansas to move the football on them repeatedly is going to be able to move the ball to midfield and punt. I don't think they're going to be moving the football to score. I think they're going to be moving the football to take clock and to punt. And Oklahoma has had a number of games with both quarterbacks this year where they have not been able to score requisite of a total like this. So I'm going to go under here for this game.
I think we're giving a lot of credit to Dave Aranda's defense. It's not the best thing since sliced bread.
But it is still Dave Aranda, right? And you and I talked about this a little bit before the show. The smart minds in college football tend to stand out, and kind of a combination of what Mike was saying and what Eric was saying. This is a true freshman quarterback going into Waco to face what is a ranked team and a talented team against a head coach like Dave Aranda. Dave Aranda has been watching Caleb Williams for a while, and you know that that's going to be the case so far this season because he knows that this game has been down the schedule and this is an important one for them. So I would have faith in Dave Aranda to be able to make Caleb Williams more uncomfortable than he ever has been this season. Is it going to be enough to get him a win? No, probably not. I'd still be taking Oklahoma straight up, But that is why I'd take Baylor in 5.5. I would take Baylor in 5.5 here.
I also would not discount the fact that Oklahoma is number 8 in college football playoff rankings right now and feels like they have something to prove. We've seen Cincinnati, since the college football playoff rankings come out, look like they're pressing.
Yeah.
And that's very, very well something Oklahoma could look to do in this game, looking for a statement win. Pressing, throwing into maybe bad balls down the football field could be something that Caleb Williams does because he feels the need to prove something, when in actuality, any sort of win, I think if they just win out, even if it's 3, 4
that's a
point
great
wins,
point, right? Because for them, their road is so difficult that just if they win all of the 4 next games by 3 points, they're probably in the college football playoff. And to your point, like, they might believe that since they're behind a team like Cincinnati, they got to cover the spread in every single game, and that's just not the truth. Like,
I mean, that's the immeasurable aspect of it, though.
No, but that's something that you think about as an athlete. I think that's a realistic thing to bring to the table. You could look at Oklahoma's defense; they're 59th in the country. Baylor's scoring offense is 18th. So if you are sitting here thinking to yourself, "We're number 8 in the country," we got to start blowing teams out. If Baylor even keeps pace with you, that might be a little bit of unnecessary pressure. For as good as Caleb Williams is, he is still a true freshman. And you know what, guys? I'd love nothing more than to see Caleb Williams come out and ball out and make this Oklahoma team look great, because that means that we've got a legit national championship contender on our hands. I just don't know if we see it. Betting on a true freshman is kind of tough.
And also, too, I mean, you made a good point about Baylor's offense. I mean, I think I've been more impressed with what Baylor's been able to do offensively because, I mean, we were expecting this offense to be not just one of the worst in the Big 12, but one of the worst in all of college football. That's what it was last year. But here they are. They've been putting up points, and they've already exceeded their win total. And I think it's mostly because of what Jeff Grimes has been able to do with that offense, really making up for the lack of talent with the scheme. And you look at Oklahoma's defense, like you said, 6.5 yards per play allowed to opposing Power 5 offenses. That's a bottom 10 mark in the Power 5. And of course, Kansas, nearly a third of their pass plays was a 15-plus yard gain for them, right? So that any team can take advantage of this Oklahoma defense, including Baylor. I just think at the end of the day, Oklahoma is just more talented. I think they can come out by a touchdown. Now, if this spread for some reason was 7.5, I'm not touching it. But I like the over, and I think Oklahoma can do enough to at least win by.
This one's going to be interesting for a lot of reasons, and obviously Caleb Williams is a spotlight here. I'm curious to hear if Caleb Williams is in any of you guys' Heisman conversations, because I want to talk about that too. We haven't really dug deep into the Heisman pool, I would say, for a while. We talk about the front runners, but what about who's next? Like, I want to hear in your mind who you think the front runner is, because a lot happened last week, so a lot could have changed. Who's the front runner? Mike, I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
Who is the second place guy? And then give me a dark horse. Give me 3 names from you guys from what you think guys who could be in New York and maybe even be hoisting the trophy at the end.
Front runner still, to me, has to be Kenneth Walker. The man is, I've said all the numbers when I was over there at the TV. He is the best running back in college football, the highest graded running back, the most broken tackles, the most yards. Michigan State is not close to a top 10 team if they have an average running back this year. That is just plain and simple. That is how good Kenneth Walker has been. So, yeah, they may not make the playoffs. Yeah, they may drop another one down the stretch here. But Kenneth Walker has been the best player in college football, which is the spirit of the award, which brings me to my second guy on this list, who I would think is my second pick, is Kenny Pickett, because he has been the best quarterback in college football. And Pittsburgh is still a damn good football team. It's not like he's the best quarterback on a 5-5 team, really leading them to nothing whatsoever. No, he's leading them to actual relevance this year at Pittsburgh. So if you're telling me to choose between a guy like Kenny Pickett, who is playing outstanding football every single game, or a guy like Bryce Young, who has been more impressive this season, it's not even close. It's Kenny Pickett in my eyes. I don't care that, yes, Bryce Young may play on one of the best teams in college football, but his job is far easier than what Kenny Pickett has had to do this year. So those are my clear-cut 1 and 2. And if I had to give a dark horse, if you're going to give it to the best player on the best team, and Georgia's clearly the best team in college football, it would be Nakobe Dean, the linebacker, what he has done for them. And if he has some big games down the stretch here, like he did against Florida with that pick 6, like he could do against Alabama in the SEC title game, if he has a monster showing there, at least give him an invite, because the guy has been outstanding so far this season.
I love it. Treash, what's your list? Who you got? Who's your 3?
Yeah, I'm going to side with Mike on the favorite. I'm going with Kenneth Walker. Running backs matter in college football. He's been by far the best. My next up would be Bryce Young. Even though Kenny Pickett has graded out higher, I think his situation isn't maybe that good. He's under a great deal of pressure, and his age and experience level, it's rare to see quarterbacks produce at the level that Bryce Young is. And then the dark horses, of course, is Caleb Williams for all the reasons I outlined earlier. I wanted to put Aiden Hutchinson in here, the edge defender from Michigan, because he's playing almost like a Chase Young dominance level, but they're not going to give it to him. It's not going to happen.
But I'm glad that you brought him up. That's the whole point of the exercise is to bring guys to the table. What do you think, Eric?
Yeah, I'm just going to go. The top 2 are in the betting market. The favorite, Bryce Young, Kenneth Walker. I think those, and and they're favorites by a mile. After that, I agree with a lot of what you guys are saying about, Nakobe Dean and guys like that, but like I just don't. I mean, Devontae Smith won it. He's an offensive player. Like we haven't seen a defensive player win it since Charles Woodson.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a long time. So I think Caleb Williams has a chance just because of what we said. Oklahoma is an underdog to make the college football playoff. They have to win out and probably be impressive in doing so for them to make the college football playoff. If he does that and he provides such a value over, Spencer Rattler, who we had in the conversation for number 1 overall pick, Heisman, all that kind of stuff, I think he gets consideration.
For my list, I got Kenneth Walker at the top. That's not really a surprise, but I've got Bryce Young at number 2, and I think I'm a little bit more confident in Bryce Young here. I don't think that he's just the vanilla pick. Look, Alabama's defense is not exactly what it has been in years past, right? And so if you get another quarterback in here, and my point to this is going to be, if you get another regular redshirt freshman that you were just throwing into this mix, maybe Alabama is not the Alabama that we think they are, because Bryce Young's been playing incredibly well for his age, for being a first-time starter, and I think that goes into how well he's been playing and how much he deserves the award, what he's doing for Alabama.
I'll just say this about Bryce Young. He has, or should have theoretically, the SEC title game. He goes and lights up Georgia, sure. Give him the award.
Well, yeah, I don't think that anybody
more
would be
likely than
disagreeing with you
not
there.
is he is going to go to Georgia in that SEC title game and get the brakes beaten off him.
Oh, there it is. There it is. He got it in the show.
And that's
That's
pretty much going to end his Heisman hopes right then and there.
My dark horse was Travion Henderson, the running back for Ohio State, who I think was huge in them being a catalyst to looking like a different team right now. Since week 3, he's number 1 in the country in yards per attempt and yards after contact. So, I mean, like, he has been fantastic, and I think that he deserves a mention as a dark horse there.
I like him as a mention better than C.J. Stroud. I'll just say that in terms of like who's doing more for that
C.J.
offense.
Stroud's falling off.
He's helped out a lot. So we're gonna have a little bit of fun on here. We're gonna do a blind reveal for the Heisman. We're gonna do like a blind resume thing. So we are going to look at these 5 players who Kenneth Walker's not in here. It's just 5 quarterbacks. And I want you guys to take a look at this. I want you guys at home, wherever you're watching, to take a look at this too. Who would you take? Names aside, brands aside, records aside, which one of these 5 players, these are 5 quarterbacks, would you give the Heisman to right now? Who would you be your front runner right now? Anthony, I'm going to start with you. Who do you like out of that list?
Yeah, I mean, quite clearly, player C, they've been the most dominant when they've been on the field, but as you can see by the wins above average metric, which kind of measures production, that our very own Eric Eager comprised here, one of the best metrics I've honestly ever seen. It's much lower than everybody else. He hasn't really gotten enough reps there, so it just kind of goes to show, if he can sustain that dominant level of play, throughout the rest of the season, that wins above average is going to go up. He's going to be able to do it over a larger sample. If he can keep that play up, I mean, you got to give it to player C.
Okay, so you're going with player C. Mike, what do you think?
I like player E, and because of what you just brought up there, wins above average is a way of measuring how much you've actually impacted football games. And player E right now has impacted football games more than second place on this list, which is player A. 2.8 between those two is the bigger difference than player A and player C, which is last on this list and wins above average. He is far, far and away the most impactful player to his football team. I trust Eric Eager and his take and the data team's take here to identify who's been the most impactful football player, and that clearly shows that it's been player E.
Eric, you not picking player E here would just be absolutely hilarious.
I think I know who it is too, and it agrees with Mike, by the way.
Okay, all right, so. Okay, hopefully everybody got theirs in. Hopefully the chat already has their choices in. Who is it? Let's see. Let's flip it over here. Let's see what these names are. All right, Caleb Williams. Actually, this all plays out very, very well because Treash has been very in on Caleb Williams. So for him to gravitate towards Caleb Williams' number as player C, that makes sense. Renner and Eager, they both went with Kenny Pickett. What do you guys think about that now? Seeing the names?
The Matt Corral thing is a lot because of what we talked about in college football, where rushing matters.
Yep.
And rushing from a quarterback position is extremely valuable. So what you're not seeing in the passing statistics for Corral, which also factors into his wins above average, is he has like a 200-yard rushing game, and he has stuff like that where he's adding value. But Pickett's like just been on fire for like the whole season,
nuts, man.
And not making a lot of mistakes as the turnover-worthy play thing shows.
What stood out there to me was where Bryce Young stood, which was pretty honestly rank average in the middle of those 5 guys. Did not stand out in any number or any way, shape, or form. He just is Alabama's quarterback, which is why I think he's the betting favorite, is because he's going to get the most hype around him for being on a good team, when in actuality, he has not separated himself in the college football landscape by any meaningful matter to earn the Heisman.
The model has to divide credit. And when you're dividing credit amongst Alabama players, you just share more of it. When you're the Heisman hopeful for Pittsburgh, you get a lot of the credit because there's not amazing Heisman caliber
there's less
players.
To lean on. Yeah,
exactly.
I think
so that's part of the thing too, and that's hopefully, that should be taken into consideration.
Let's get back to these game previews. We've got Ohio State versus Purdue. This is the big game, right? I mean, like, when we talked about Ohio State having a difficult schedule, this is, of course, the one that everybody was circling. Not Michigan State, not Michigan. It's surviving Purdue. Now this one's at the Horseshoe. This one's in Columbus. Ohio State, I believe a 21-point favorite right now is what I saw before the show. So, Tresh, I'm going to start with you. Does Ohio State have enough to beat Purdue by 21 points at home?
I think they're going to win. I don't think they're going to be a part of the upsets like Iowa and Michigan State. But I'm not touching this spread because I have no idea who the hell the Buckeyes are anymore. I mean, what have they been the last 2 weeks, right? They failed to cover the big number of the last 2 games against Penn State and Nebraska. I mean, you look at what they did last week. Negative expected points, lowest successful pass play rate of the season. C.J. Stroud had to throw into some tighter windows, was under pressure a little bit more than average, and he had 4 turnover-worthy plays for the game. That's a big concern. I mean, not just like if they get to the college football playoff, can they compete, but what about Michigan? Because that's going to be a very tough game. This is, I think, going to be the toughest game for Ohio State against a Michigan team over the last few years. So I think they beat Purdue, but at the end of the day, I'm just not comfortable enough, laying 21.
Does Purdue, though, Purdue's a plucky team. Like, they've beaten 2 top 3 teams this year, right? And they've beaten them handily, both cases.
Would you say they beat the brakes off them?
Yeah.
You would?
I mean,
wow,
but
okay,
Pepperidge Farm remembers how bad their offense was against Wisconsin, right? Like how and if you can't play offense at a level, look at all the things you said about Ohio State last week are true, but still this season they are averaging 0.16 positive expected points when running the ball and double that when passing the ball. When you can move the football, you can cover spreads. And to me, I think that's why I kind of like. It was minus 20 on the graphics, minus 20.5, minus 21 now, I think, in some sports books. People are betting Ohio State. I don't know if it got to 21.5, would I lay it? Probably not, but 21, I still think I would. Just because, again, and for the other part is, it's really hard to get up for all of these games, right? In the NFL show, what we talk about with Tennessee, after they beat Buffalo, could they get up for Kansas City? All this kind of stuff.
It's a weekly topic.
And Purdue, it's can you get up for this game? At some point you have to have a letdown, and they had a letdown against Wisconsin after they beat Iowa. They might have a letdown here after they've beaten Michigan State.
Wisconsin's I would say the second best defense in the Power 5. That's still a very talented group.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I would say talent-wise, though, Ohio State's probably better than them. Maybe not specifically on defense, but just overall talent-wise, Ohio State's
I don't think anybody's
arm and a leg ahead of everybody else.
What do you think, Mike?
I like Purdue to cover 21. I'll just say that because of the predictability of Ohio State's defense. They're a very talented defense, but you have defined matchups that you're going to get with that single high heavy defense, which means with David Bell at right wide receiver, he will be going up against Denzel Burke, and that is a matchup that a true freshman cornerback. Now, he's been outstanding this year. Only allowed 17 of 39 targets for 164 yards. But David Bell's a grown man at 6'2", 210 pounds, and he has gone for over 200 against Michigan State, gone for over 200 against Iowa. He's going to get 15 to 20 targets in this game, and I think at least they're going to be able to move the ball offensively. And then at that point, 21's a lot when you think Purdue's going to score in the 20s.
We've talked a lot on this show about what Ohio State has been in the second half of this season, right? How much different they look, how much better C.J. Stroud looked since he came back from sitting out that 1 week. Since week 6, C.J. Stroud, number 2 quarterback in the Big Ten in terms of PFF grade. You know who's number 1? That's right, it's Aiden O'Connell, the quarterback for Purdue. He's got an 89 grade here for us. Now, he is more volatile, right? I mean, O'Connell takes more sacks. He's got more turnover-worthy plays, but O'Connell's got 11 big-time throws compared to C.J. Stroud's just 6. And so O'Connell's been putting it on teams when it comes to their schedule. So for that, I don't think Purdue is just this team that can't move the ball and just happens to get way lucky on their defense with George Karlaftis. I think that they really can I don't want to go as far as maybe say hangs with Ohio State, but I think this is certainly going to be closer than 3 touchdowns. That's what I think. You guys
so I'm alone.
He's
here.
alone.
As David,
So you think Ohio State's gonna cover
last
this
week?
one?
Last week when I was alone,
I'll change my pick. I'll side with you. I'll side with you.
Hey, are you gonna? You're not gonna.
Wow,
leave me
you
hanging.
got him that time.
Yeah, me and Eric are together on this
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
We'll go up against you guys.
That was an Easter egg for
I
people
think I
who
will
thought
say
that you got
made
left
Renner
hanging.
feel more confident.
I'm very confident.
That
was great.
I would say on a weekly basis, I've been the most right about Purdue this season.
I mean,
Look, if we were restricting arguments
What a thing to
specifically to
hang your hat on.
Purdue, then yes, I agree.
you called both upsets, so you're right.
I have. I said
right.
they're the ultimate trap team before the season. If anyone's a trap team in college football, it is Purdue. Now,
Treash
this
should
one,
start a
I don't think
service
it's gonna
just
happen.
betting on Purdue games.
I know.
So I feel
Might hit.
It's in my
Hey, it
blood.
might be a good side
It's in my
business.
blood.
I'm a Sun Belt better. I'm a Purdue better.
Yeah. I don't mess with those other
Folks,
conferences.
Pristine Auction is your go-to place for signed sports memorabilia. It's all auction-style stuff, so you can be searching your favorite team, your favorite player, whatever it is, and you can find whatever items that you are looking for, and it all starts off at $1. If you use the promo code PFF, you're going to get $10 off whatever the first auction is that you win. Not just the first one that you bet on. It's going to be the first one that you win. Pristine Auction, it is your go-to place for signed sports memorabilia. Check them out or at pristineauction.com. Michigan at Penn State, staying in the Big Ten. Can Michigan survive is basically, that's what we're looking for here. Can Michigan survive until they play Ohio State? Because for as much as I think a lot of people were disappointed, certainly I guess it seems like the committee was disappointed that Michigan lost to Michigan State because they still have Michigan ranked higher than Michigan State. Can they get to that big game at Ohio State? Because I think that everything is still in front of them. I thought that Michigan was going to be favored a lot more in this game, but they're on the road. It's at Penn State, and Michigan's only favored by 1.5. I believe that's what the line is.
It opened actually
1.5.
with Penn State as a small favorite. People have been betting Michigan
So,
a little
okay,
bit. Points are not worth that much in college football, so it's really easy to kind of go.
Yeah,
from
sure.
Plus 1.5 to minus 1.5.
I thought it'd be a lot more than this, but Eric, what do you think about this line, and what do you think about this game?
Yeah, it feels square, but I kind of like Michigan -1. You know, I know Penn State's a tough place to play, and I would rather watch anything but this game. But I do want to bet Michigan -1. Look, I just don't think Penn State has emerged offensively since the Auburn game. They kind of been just like a meh. I know that they got a win last week and a cover against Maryland, but that was because of a pick six and some weird sort of Scott Van Pelt behavior by Maryland. So Look, I like Michigan -1 here. I think they take control of this game, and I think because they have a lot more to play for, they'll be able to sort of push them further than this -1 suggests.
What do you think, Treash?
I'm going to side with Eric again. I like Michigan here.
One's enough.
Right.
One show.
Yeah.
It's one show because Eric realizes that if he sides with you too many times, in his mind, he's going to be wrong somewhere.
I got in on him early. Anyway, I mean, they got the advantage Michigan does, of course, because this is not a night game in Happy Valley. It's at noon. But most importantly, guess who's coming to town? Aiden
Santa
Hutchinson.
Claus.
Not him yet. I will say.
Okay, sorry.
I am in the camp.
Close.
Force a habit. Force a
Here
habit.
comes the Santa Claus take.
Hang on. No, I was just going to say, the holiday take. Some people absolutely hate the Christmas stuff
Santa Claus
before
take?
Thanksgiving.
Are you going to get into anti-Santa?
Santa Claus is
No,
the
I'm
butter
not-
of
Santa Claus.
fictional characters.
I'm all about getting the holiday stuff before Thanksgiving. That was where I was going with this. But if
Okay.
we're going to fake stuff, I can go all day.
No. Get back onto football, please. Is Michigan fake? That's basically what
I was
people
trying to remember what I was going to
That's
say.
what people. That was the segue.
Aiden
I set you
Hutchinson's
up
coming
right
to town.
there. Aiden Hutchinson is coming to town.
Yes, of course. Aiden Hutchinson, David Ajabo, both top 5 in the Power 5 in PFF grade this season. Best pass rush duo in all of college
He
football.
knows when the left
You look
tackle's
at-
sleeping. He knows when he's awake.
He does. We know when he's been bad or good because we've got the grades.
Thank you.
And who's been bad under pressure? Sean Clifford.
Wow.
He's been horrible against the Power 5
What is
pressure
this segment?
pockets. 28.9 passing grade, or PFF grade. It's been horrendous. Absolutely bad. These two are going to have their way with them, and I think they're going to force them into some turnovers there, and I think that's going to be enough to get them over the hump there. And also, too, Penn State's rush defense is really not there.
Not a deal.
And so I like Michigan for that reason.
Yeah, I can't in good conscience pick Michigan. It goes against everything I believe in. But I will say I like the under 48.5 in this game because if we are looking matchup by matchup, most of them favor the defensive side of the ball on both sides. So that would be Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo going up against left tackle Rasheed Walker. Jahan Dotson can at least get slowed down by Daxton Hill and his speed. At least I think he's going to put a cap on some of those deep balls that we've seen from him in recent weeks to where I don't think a lot of points are going to be put in the scoreboard.
Man, you mentioned David Ojabo, the only pass rusher in the Big Ten who has a better pass rush grade than Ojabo is Aiden Hutchinson. That's it. It's those two guys at 1-2, and it's very close. It's not like Aiden Hutchinson's blowing him out of the water. I believe it's a point and a half that really separates him when it comes to pass rush grade. This is a dude, Mike highlighted him when he was over talking about his risers. He hadn't even been playing football that long. Yeah. He was born in Nigeria, moved to Scotland when he was very young, lived over in Scotland, came over to the United States at age 15, and he really didn't start playing football until his junior year. So we're looking at like year 4, year 5 of this guy ever playing football, and I think the light's turning on for him this year. He is really putting it all together. He understands now how to attack the outside shoulder, how to set up offensive tackles for later in the game. You have this pass rush plan where, okay, I've attacked the outside shoulder. I see you cheating a little bit that way. You saw him last week, I think, hit that inside move on a guy, and it was perfect. The timing was perfect. The execution was perfect. This is a legit potential first-round edge rusher here because of everything that he brings to the table. So those two guys, I expect them to be game wreckers. I'm with Eric. I'm taking Michigan, overcoming the points. I think that that's the way that this is going to go here.
It's kind of scary. I mean, he played opposite Odafe Owe in high school, and like their career paths, like the trajectory is almost identical.
Yeah,
it's very. And his background is one of the most wilds, like you were outlining. It's crazy.
And we're seeing Odafe Owe, succeed in the NFL when we looked at his college career and goes, oh, there's not that much production. Maybe people are going to look back on David Ojabo's and say like, oh, there wasn't a ton of production. Well, now look at what Owe is doing in the NFL. He's doing pretty well for himself. Georgia and Tennessee is the next game. We're heading over to the SEC. Georgia's at Tennessee for this game, but they're still a 20-point favorite in this one. Treash, what do you think about this matchup between the unquestioned number 1 team in the country and what is supposed to be a rivalry game here with Tennessee?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Josh Heupel's offense, what he's done with Tennessee. I'm happy for Hendon Hooker. I've been pounding the table. I thought he should have been starting from day one. I think he's an underrated college quarterback. But they're going to get smacked in this one because this is a different animal. It just is. Georgia is an absolute different animal. I think they're going to cover the 20 points, and I like the under 56. You look at Hendon Hooker, how did they score 24 on Tennessee? Or score 24 on Bama. 14 of those points came on really bad coverage. They caught Bama off guard, and that's what they're going to try to do. They're going to take, use every inch of the field there, going sideline, using tempo, trying to catch them off guard, and I just don't think they're going to do that against Georgia. Hendon Hooker, too, he's converting pressure to sack at one of the highest rates in college football. That's the one thing that he has a really bad issue with. 37% there, highest in Power 5. I think we're going to see Georgia take him to the ground at least more times than I can count on one hand. It's probably going to be a 6-sack game.
Yeah, you brought that up, and the fact that Tennessee has the 110th pass blocking grade in the country, going up against Georgia's front seven that, we've talked about.
We could be the secondary for Georgia in this game.
I could go out and play cornerback.
Right,
I'm not sure it would matter.
I just jaw the whole game. I just tell the wide receiver, you're not catching anything.
Our coworker Richard Sherman.
Yeah, I give him the yawn because it never come. And anytime, even if the ball was incomplete and it didn't even come to me, just straight like this the whole time, getting in his face, whatever. That'd be me. Eric, what do you think about this match?
Yeah, I like under 56. I think Georgia has been in this weird spot. Like last week, if you watched them against Missouri, one of the worst teams in the SEC, they didn't cover the spread, but it was 40.5. Game went under. They've kind of been playing these games where it's right on the point spread, and whether or not a team backdoors them or not is kind of up in the air. But these games have been playing under because of what you guys are saying. Their defense is just too damn good, and opposing teams just have something wrong about them. In this case, Tennessee and Georgia, luckily in a lot of cases, been able to exploit that immensely. So I like under 56 here. I think the Georgia offense is probably, content sort of running the clock out in a lot of ways in this game just to get to next week.
I'm with that as well. I like the under in this game. I don't love betting Georgia when the spreads are this big. I get why they are because they're that damn good. Yeah. But I'd much rather bet under on a lot of Georgia games. 13 of the top 50 defensive players in the SEC belong to Georgia when it comes to our overall defensive grades. That's insane. They've got 13 of the highest 50 grades in the entire conference on one team. It's insane. They're averaging only giving up 6.6 points per game. That's damn near historic. So, there's not really a prayer for Tennessee at this point. we got to talk about our prize pick prop bets. And I'm reluctant to bring this up because I have sucked the last 4 weeks in a row. I don't know what's going on. I don't know who I pissed off in the universe, but it's not going so well for me. Eric, I believe that you're still up front. You are. 67% win percentage is good. Mike, you're right there. You're right there. Seth, not as many picks to make, but Seth's sitting there at 60% as well. Treash, you're at 50 and I'm at 43. So if you guys are new around here, what we do is we take 3 over-under prop bets for the upcoming week. We all pick them here. You guys, of course, can pick them at home. And Kendall will be able to read them off on the chat, see if there's a unanimous pick. And we're keeping score. We'll keep a score throughout the year, and that'll be our bragging rights for the year. So, Kendall, what is our first prize picks over-under prop bet today?
Yep, so the first one, so you can get it together.
Are you saying this is easy? Are you saying this is, should get this one?
You should just... We'll get it together. We'll do it together. Matt Corral over under 261.5 passing yards versus Texas A&M.
I'm not sure if that was faith or pity from Kendall, but I guess I'll take both because I need everything that I can get. What do you guys think about this one? I'll start with Treash. 261.5. It's tradition that I start with you here.
I know.
261.5 over under.
Kind of on a heater. I don't know. Under. You might want to tell me, Eric. I like the under in this one.
How is the last 5 minutes of TV given rise to that statement right there?
Look, Tresh is a confident guy. You love to see it.
We've agreed on the last 3 games.
I know. That's what I'm deathly afraid of. It scares the shit out of me.
Okay, so what are you going with?
I like the under. The banged up wide receiver room going up against this defense. I think Matt Corral, we're probably going to see him under pressure like Mike outlined too. He's going to be trying to create some with his legs. I think he goes under this number.
Eric, are you going to tail him?
All right, under.
You are.
Under.
Mike?
I'm going under as well. I think they're going to go a little run heavy in this game to try to, like I said, mitigate some of those weapons issues on the outside.
The last time we were all unanimous, I was like, oh, okay, I'll be different, and then I was different for the wrong reason. So I'm going under. I agree that's I think what the game script is going to be. I think Texas
Tresh is here at 50%, basically flipping coins and trying to tell us, clowning us for tailing him.
This is the kind of confidence we need on the show here.
I agree. Good show so far. Let's not say butter's fake in the last 10 minutes.
Kenna, what's the next one?
We can get to
All right, next one. Jahan Dotson over under 87.5 receiving yards versus Michigan.
87.5. Mike, I'm going to start with you on this one.
I'm going under. I think this is all really Michigan has to worry about. If they're going to lose this game, it's going to be because Jahan Dotson goes for 150 plus. I think they know that, and I think they're going to allocate resources accordingly.
I think Jahan Dotson was it was Jahan Dotson and Wan'Dale Robinson, right? Earlier in the year, we were going over under, and we're like, okay, I guess we're going under, and it was way under on all of them. So we got Jahan here again. Eric, I'll go you this time, so Tresh can't say that you're riding.
Under. Yeah, I think. I agree with what Mike says. This is and the other thing is how bad Clifford's been under pressure. Also how stout Michigan can be. They were a little leaky against Michigan State, but Michigan State has 2 good receivers that can run with them. So I'm going to go under 87.5 here.
Tresh?
Yeah, I got to agree. I'm going under. I think this is kind of a one-trick pony here, and I think Michigan, they have the horses to stop that. And like you said, bad under pressure for Sean Clifford. I think it's going to be a bad day offensively for Penn State.
The only name on the whiteboard is Jahan Dotson's name. That's it for defense. It's just stop him. You're going to stop Penn State. I agree. We got to go under here. So we're all agreeing again. Third one, Kendall. Let's see if we can get some disagreement here.
Sam Hartman over under 369.5 passing yards versus NC State.
Nice.
This is free money. I mean,
this is under, right?
Yeah.
It's got to be under. Is anyone going over?
I was going over.
You're going over? Okay, all right. So you're going over?
Yeah.
369.5?
This is a good NC State defense.
That does. They're still going to put up yards. I mean, that offense.
They
throw till they
give zero blanks about anything on offense. This is. I mean, they might lose this game. They'll throw for 450.
Yeah.
But what's the alternative here? Do you think NC State shuts them down? I don't think so. They could win, but I don't know.
I can't predict a 400-yard game. Even if he's capable of hitting it, I'm going under.
I agree with you, mathematically, but the Tresh going under factor.
Sure, no, that's you're right. I didn't think about that.
I put that variable in the model, and it says over.
It's true. All right, so Mike, you're going over?
Over.
You think? Okay. Eric's going over?
Yeah. Me and Mike are.
We'll get one back this week.
Okay.
Going back.
All right, so we say we, you mean me and you, right? I need this. Come on, help me out here.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Hey, you're the one that's at what, 43%?
Listen, I'm gonna come on in a heater. I'm gonna be like 2015 Ohio State. Just come in at the end, just start blowing everybody out. Come win it at the end. Eric, what do we think about bets for the road? Non-prop bets.
So tonight's game, Cincinnati going on the road against USF. The picture there, no picture this week. All right, I like Cincinnati laying the points here. I think that USF, if you watch them this year, if you've bet on them like I have, they're terrible. Cincinnati sort of loosens up a little bit after a few weeks of playing close games. I like UAB, the Blazers, plus 4.5 at Marshall, and then Utah State, plus 4.5 at a kind of a banged up San Jose State team.
All right, there we go. If you want to throw down some bets, prop bets, whatever it is, download the Prize Picks app. Use the promo code PFF, and if you do, you can get a free PFF Edge subscription. If you're watching on YouTube, the download link is going to be right below the show. Final thoughts before we get out of here. Kendall, do we have any? I'm actually very reluctant to ask if we have any sort of odd Santa takes, butter takes, whatever. What's the chat been talking about so far today?
Yeah, someone did say like, "Hey, watch out! I want to make sure my kid isn't listening next time for the Santa stuff." So I'd watch out for that.
Yeah.
That's great, Treash. Good
I
job.
didn't say that. I said
Treash is out here ruining Christmas.
My wife Stephanie told our
Mike
kids
over
that
there.
Santa wasn't real, like from the jump.
Oh,
What?
Yeah, like they came. It's a long story, but my kids.
The Grinch.
I actually
Were you
respect
for this?
that. I respect it.
Look, there are some things
like
you just
it.
punt on in life and marriage.
Yeah, you
I
get to the 50 and punt, right?
Exactly.
With
I
the
didn't
game
fight that
script.
one.
That's what we're looking for.
I think that's a good idea.
Thank you, Treash.
I think it's a good idea. But hang on, I wasn't the one that said that. They said that. I was just saying the holiday stuff before Thanksgiving. I'm full for it.
You're for it?
Yeah.
What do we
I'm okay
think?
with it.
Kendall, what do we think? Can you play Christmas music or put up the tree before Thanksgiving?
No.
No?
Absolutely not.
No.
See,
No? Okay, all right.
once
So
you
we got
Hang
no.
on, that's different. You have kids.
Yes, you cannot. You have to basically
That's
put the
true.
tree
That's
up
true.
You're different.
December
true.
20th.
December 20th?
Yeah, because the
Wait,
kids are
what?
going to be negotiating present opening
What
on
kind
like
of a
December
Scrooge are
14th.
you?
if
Santa
you're not
doesn't
freaking
exist.
careful.
You could only
gonna make
confine the
comment.
joy to 5
Yeah, if
days.
Santa doesn't exist, look, if you're woke and you say Santa doesn't exist, the kids don't even like worry about the 25th. They're like, give me the present on
Do
the
you
11th.
actually give your kids coal when they're bad? Because now I think that you do.
I don't know.
Okay.
No. Come on. Do I look?
You're telling people they can't even enjoy the joy of Christmas
No, I'm not saying
until
that. I'm saying
December
it's
20th.
I'm saying it's tactically bad because if you start letting your kids open presents December 9th, then by the time you get to December 24th, then they're asking for more, right? Their friend, they forgot that you gave them the presents 2 weeks ago. Their friends are all opening them. They're like, "Hey, Dad, where's more presents?"
I think he's ranting about past years.
Experience is the greatest teacher, Treash. You'll find out when you turn 24.
I mean, I can't make a comment on that. I don't have kids. So I'm just going to stay out of that. But I guess we found out the lesson learned today. Eric is woke, and we are not.
Absolute anarchy. Absolute anarchy here in the Christmas takes. Absolute anarchy here in the show. Appreciate everybody watching. This was a lot of fun. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. For Kendall Valenzuela, for Mike Renner, for Anthony Treash, and for Eric Eager, I'm Trevor Sikkema. We will see you right here, same time next week. Enjoy the weekend.